So we're going to dive right in. I've got a lot of information I want to share with you all. I'm excited to share it with you all. But I have a question for you first. How many of you have heard of the new pill that lowers your weight, lowers your cholesterol, lowers your blood sugar, opens up clogged arteries, reverses heart disease and erectile dysfunction, cures acid reflux and constipation, decreases your risk of dementia and many cancers, and gives you lots of energy? Have you guys heard of this new pill? No? Me neither. Which is a shame, isn't it? Because I assume that many of us would like to be well and age well, with excellent overall health, ideal body weight, little to no medications, feeling good, functioning, high level of function, high quality of life until the very end. How many of you would like that? Just one, two, just two of you. Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Then you're in the right place. We're in the right place. And you know, the reason I came today is because of this. Yes, it's about food, but it's really about living well. And the message that I bring today, yes, again, it's about food, but honestly, what it's really about is hope. That's what I'm bringing today, is the message of hope. There's a lot more hope than we realize. A lot of people don't realize this. And in fact, there's so much hope that, quite honestly, and I know this might sound a bit like hyperbole, but what I'm going to share with you today is the closest thing to magic I've seen in medicine. You might think, again, that sounds like exaggeration, and I'll let you be the judge based on what you see today and what you hear and what you learn. But even if it does sound like hyperbole to you, I can tell you with certainty that it's the most powerful medicine, all-around medicine, that I've seen in nearly 20 years of being a doctor. And I'm going to share with you all why I feel that way throughout this presentation. So what is this most powerful medicine that I've seen in the medical field? What is it? Well, believe it or not, and you might have to pinch yourselves. I pinch myself all the time. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet. Can you imagine? Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? Well, what's in the buffet, right? There's always a catch, isn't there? Well, it's whole plant foods that are in the buffet, and vegetables, including starchy vegetables, including potatoes, fruits, whole grains, beans, mushrooms, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. Let's not forget the herbs and spices because of all the flavor, but also the health benefits that they bring as well. So what are the benefits of this buffet, right? I mean, I call it a magical buffet, but what makes it so magical? Well, there's innumerable benefits. Honestly, there are so many, there's too many to list, and I can't go through each and every one. But I do want to share this list with you here. And one of my favorite benefits, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, is weight loss without portion control. We've all been told that to weigh less, you have to eat less and exercise more, right? How many of you have heard that? Right? Well, when you eat this way, you actually can eat without counting, without measuring, without portion control, without going hungry. You could eat until you're full and then stop and just be free, eat freely. Anyone interested in learning about that or living that way? But, and honestly, with the way the obesity epidemic is in our country today, if all a plant-based diet did was that would be amazing. But it does so much more. It prevents and reverses our most common causes of death and most disabling diseases that we have in our modern world, such as heart disease. And by the way, do you know what ED stands for? I know we're in church, but I think it's safe to talk about this. It's important. You guys know what ED stands for? It's erectile dysfunction. I'm just going to say it. How many of you knew or know that erectile dysfunction, in most cases, is the same disease as heart disease? Anyone know this? I know some of you do. Some of you have been to these classes before. And for those of you who don't know, does anyone want to share with why they're the same disease or how they're the same disease? Circulation, exactly. When you get clogged arteries in one part of your body, you get clogged arteries everywhere. It's just a matter of time before certain arteries clog up. Now, that being said, a man who gets erectile dysfunction typically will get the erectile dysfunction first and then the heart disease years later. Does anyone know why that's the case? Some of you, I think, know. Exactly. Smaller vessels. If I had a prize, you'd win. Smaller vessels. So smaller vessels tend to clog up first and then larger vessels years later. So a man who gets erectile dysfunction may not know this, but that man is at high risk of getting heart disease years down the road. And a lot of times, men don't know this. They go to the doctor. Even the doctors either don't know it or don't share it with patients. The patient asks for that little pill. They get the little pill. They think the problem's solved. And unfortunately, the problem's not solved. The problem's continuing to get worse. And years later, there may be a heart attack or a stroke. And the man had no idea that he had control over the situation, because not only can a plant-based diet open up small arteries, it can open up large arteries. So erectile dysfunction can be reversed, prevented and reversed, as well as heart disease. And I know that there's so many popular diets these days, but no other diet, no other way of eating has ever been proven to reverse heart disease, erectile dysfunction, open up clogged arteries. So that's really one powerful way, very meaningful, powerful distinction between a plant-based diet and so many of the other sort of fad diets out there. More than that, there's an epidemic of diabetes as well. This way of eating prevents and reverses type 2 diabetes. It lowers cholesterol, lowers blood pressure, lowers risk of cancer, lower rates of dementia. And then just about all digestive problems like acid reflux, constipation, a lot of the problems, gallstones, et cetera, et cetera. How many of you have heard before that a high fiber diet is good for your digestive system? You've heard that? Right. So which foods have fiber? All plant foods. All plant foods have fiber. Now, processed foods have very little to no fiber because most of the fiber is removed. Animal foods have how much fiber? Chicken, fish, eggs, cheese? None, exactly. So when you've heard before that a high fiber diet is good for your digestive system, essentially what you're hearing is that a plant-based diet is good for your digestive system. So, it's good for your weight, it's good for your circulation, it's good for diabetes, it's good for so many things, and your digestive system. Most patients who eat this way are able to get off several medications. In some cases, all medications. It depends on what it is. Even people who've been on insulin for 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of times, in the majority of cases, they can get off of it eating this way, which is quite incredible. People who eat this way, there's studies showing that high fiber diet helps people to live longer. Pastor John was referring to that earlier. And then, who wants to live long and be miserable? Anybody want to be miserable? I don't want to be miserable. But this way of eating has been shown, has been proven to actually improve quality of life. Less pain, less inflammation, more energy. And the other thing that I love about this too, as opposed to, I'm a doctor and I prescribe pills all day long. That's what I've trained to do. I'm trying to help people get off pills, but nonetheless, there's a need for some medications. But what I love about this, as opposed to medication, is that if I prescribe a medication to lower your blood pressure, that lowers your blood pressure, but not your sisters, not your mothers, not your fathers, brothers, not your neighbors. But if we teach you how to eat well, and you share that with your family, and you share that with your friends, the benefits can spread. So not only are the benefits innumerable in yourself, but if you spread them to others, the benefits can spread exponentially. And we can't say the same thing about medication, of course. So how does weight loss without portion control actually work? Well, it's actually quite simple. You're all going to get 2 new best friends today. You didn't know this; it wasn't advertised in the promotional, materials for the program. But your 2 new best friends are fiber and water. Why fiber and water? Well, guess what? Fiber and water take up space in your stomach, right? They take up space. They have weight. But how many calories do they have? No cheating. They have 0 calories, right? So whole plant foods are rich in fiber and water. So when you eat whole plant foods, you're filling up, but with less calories, because the fiber and water take up space, but no calories. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like you're filling up your stomach with a balloon that doesn't have any calories in it. So there's only so much room in there, right? So you can't squeeze. So when you eat whole plant foods, you could have 400 calories of whole plant foods and be full. But 400 calories of beef, 400 calories of oil doesn't fill you up. In fact, there is a medical procedure where they can implant a balloon in your stomach. This is a real procedure. It costs about $8,000. They can only leave it in for 6 months. But essentially, a plant-based diet does everything that does without any risk, without any side effects. In fact, with all the benefits I just mentioned. And anyway, I don't think it's very popular, that balloon procedure. But the point is that you can basically get the benefits of that with this. In fact, I have I'll show this in a moment. I want to show this next. This is calorie density. You might be wondering, so can we just eat any and all plant foods, unlimited quantities? Well, yes and no. They're not all the same. So we can kind of rank them in order of what we call calorie density, which is pound for pound, how many calories the different foods have. The foods that are lowest in calorie density are going to help you lose weight the most, and those that are the highest are going to be more problematic. So for example, When your average calories per pound of your food is about 550, most people don't gain weight, they don't lose, they stay about the same. So you want to keep it, if your goal is weight loss, you want to keep this number under 550. Now you don't really have to do math or anything like that, because I'm going to teach you some basic concepts about this here. So veggies are 100 calories per pound, fruits 300. You can see the numbers on the screen. So veggies, fruits, potatoes, whole grains, and beans. If you take the average of all these numbers here, you would see that the average is going to be less than 550. So essentially, that's an all-you-can-eat buffet. If you have a combination of veggies, fruits, potatoes, whole grains, and beans. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, it's an easy concept. Now that being said, some people get frustrated. They say, gee, I'm not losing much weight. Odds are they're just not eating enough veggies, because as you can see, the more veggies you eat, your average number is going to be much lower. You're going to push your number much lower, your calorie density much lower that way. So eat your veggies. Your grandmother was right. As you go down though, you can see where people get into trouble. And this is why the orange and the red foods are why we've been told that we have to use portion control, is because those foods are so high in calorie density. The only way to manage your weight is either do tons of exercise or eat smaller portions. But smaller portions doesn't really work because it makes us hungry and we have cravings, and it's not sustainable and it's not natural, and the animals don't do it, right? So if your goal is weight loss, I say eat primarily from these groups here. If you want to take a picture of this, that's fine. But be careful with avocados. And if you're wondering, why are these foods higher? In general, remember, fiber and water are your friend. So as you get the foods that have less fiber and the foods that have less water are going to be higher. The other thing is the foods that have more fat are going to be higher too. It's not that we can't eat fat, but we just have to be careful if we're trying to lose weight, not to eat too much. So avocados are higher because of fat. You have to be careful with them. Animal foods, you can see. Now, bread and tortillas and cereals, they could be whole grain bread, whole grain tortillas, and they appear to be very healthy, but they're higher in calorie density because they're dry. Remember, fiber and water are your friend. So if your goal is weight loss, I recommend little to no bread. I'm not saying bread is evil and it should be avoided completely. And there are such things as healthier breads and less healthy breads, but when your goal is weight loss, I say stay away from it as much as you can and stick with cooked whole grains, because when you cook whole grains, you cook them in water, right? So we want the water in the food. I recommend avoiding sweeteners. Oh, I skipped dried fruit, sorry. Dried fruit I recommend limiting if your goal is weight loss, not necessarily avoiding, because it's dry and you can fit more calories in your stomach that way. The goal is not to fit too many calories in there. Going down the list, so the sweeteners I recommend avoiding or at least limiting for a couple reasons, not only because of calorie density, but also because many of us struggle with a sweet tooth. And if your goal is weight loss, you want to kind of really address the sweet tooth that you have. And you're not really going to address it by having a lot of maple syrup and honey. The way you're going to really fix your sweet tooth the best you can is to get used to fruit and enjoy fruit. So eat fruit and get your sweetness from fruit, but not from sweeteners, if that makes any sense. And then as we go down, I'm going to skip some of these. I think you all know about the dangers of sugar. Cheese, I'm going to skip for now. Now, junk food's kind of an interesting category because there are healthier versions of cookies, crackers, and chips that are plant-based and have better ingredients, but they're still dry, they're crunchy, they're salty, they're addicting. And they're higher in calorie density, especially because they're dry. And they tend to be higher in fat, too. Even if they're healthier fats, if your goal is weight loss, you're not going to really lose a lot of weight with cookies, crackers, and chips, even if they're healthier versions. So that's that. And then oil and butter. Oh, I almost forgot nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds are very healthy. They're very healthy. However, they're very high in calorie density. So I recommend them as a condiment. Okay, maybe as a dressing, as a sauce, maybe sprinkle some on top, or as an occasional dessert treat or something. I think we're going to have a treat here with some nuts. That's fine. But where people get into trouble is when people are snacking on nuts. It's very easy to overeat when you're snacking on nuts. And I'm going to show you a quick actual example of this here. I brought some jars. And each jar is the size of the average human stomach. So imagine this is your stomach, and each jar has 400 calories of food in it. This is 400 calories of grapes. You can see that fruit really is not a problem for weight loss because you could, with all the fiber and the water, you can be full with not too many calories. However, if you eat a lot of dried fruit, this is 400 calories of raisins. I don't know if you guys can see, but your stomach is mostly empty. You guys see that? So if you're having a bowl of oatmeal and your goal is weight loss, it's better to put maybe strawberries or blueberries or bananas on your oatmeal, not so many raisins. Now, anyone here like pecans? I love pecans. This is 400 calories of pecans. Can you guys see? It's not that much. I could easily, I don't know about you all, but I could easily put these away in about a minute or so, maybe even 30 seconds, I don't know. And you can just imagine if you were snacking on nuts and you were hungry, you could easily put away 1,000 calories without thinking about it, right? So be careful with nuts. The last one here is so-called heart-healthy olive oil. This is 400 calories of oil, olive oil. Now, I don't know about you, but I could easily see pouring this onto a salad or some veggies and not even realizing it's there. And that's why they call it empty calories. You don't really, it doesn't fill you up, but there's a lot of calories in it. And if you're thinking, well, there's gotta be benefits to this, well, think about everything in this oil came from the olive. So why not eat the whole olive where you get less calories, but you also get all the fiber in the olive, you get all the proteins, the vitamins, the antioxidants. So there's really nothing special about oil, and definitely butter as well. So, how well does this actually work, and why am I calling this a magical buffet? Well, here, I'm gonna show you some stories today. I hope to inspire some of you. These are real stories. This is not an infomercial. It may seem like one. I sometimes feel like I'm giving an infomercial. I'm not selling anything, honest to goodness. This is Janet, and as you can see, Janet is in a scooter. And I don't know if you can tell, but there's an oxygen tube here. Janet was a former smoker, is a former smoker. She's 76 years old. She weighed about 234 pounds, and she could barely move. She could barely walk across the room because she was out of breath. She had to use a walker to walk across the room. And when she was going longer distances, she had to use a scooter. Now, if you knew someone like this, I mean, we don't always share our feelings with people and our opinions, but you might assume that, gosh, there's not much hope for her, right? I mean, how is she gonna lose a lot of weight? She can't exercise. What is she gonna, she didn't, honestly, you might think, well, maybe she should get weight loss surgery, but she didn't want that. And I don't know if they would even operate on her because of her oxygen and her lungs are not in good shape. So how would she lose weight? I mean, she'd have to starve herself maybe, but wouldn't it be kind of magical if she could eat as much as she wanted from a buffet? All, no counting, no measuring, no going hungry, lose a bunch of weight pretty easily. And wouldn't it be incredible if she could lose the walker, the scooter, and the oxygen? Would that be amazing or what? Well, guess what? That's exactly what happened to her. Within a year, all of what you see in the picture, I mean, not all of it, I mean, she's still there, but the scooter, all those problems are gone. This is her before, here she is later. Yes. Round of applause for Janet. She lost 84 pounds, lost her oxygen, lost her walker, lost her scooter. She walks everywhere. She's just living a life. She tells us she feels 25 years younger. Now, I was talking with Janet one day and she was giggling and she said, I want to show you a video on my cell phone. She was in some karaoke place and she was acting like a teenager. I mean, literally dancing and jumping up and down. I couldn't believe it. And even though the video, I'll be honest, it's a little bit corny and cheesy, I asked her, I said, this is so powerful because I know what you used to look like and how you were before, and this is just a totally different person. Would you mind if we shared this with classes and presentations? She said, absolutely, go for it, because she wants to inspire people. So here's the corny video, because I just want you to see how she's such a different person. Hopefully the sound will be good. We'll work on that. There you go. Doesn't she looks like she's at a rock concert, right? I mean, she's like a party animal, right? Exactly. So there's hope. There's a lot of hope. And again, no counting, no measuring, no portion control, no going hungry. She ate as much as she wanted. And if you asked her, Janet, are you happy with how you're eating? She said, she would say she loves it. And it's the most rewarding thing also as a physician too, to be able to help people like this. Before I knew all this, I didn't know what to do. Now, what's amazing, as I mentioned, is that the benefits are contagious. So Janet has a daughter named Kim, and Kim had weight loss surgery. She's 54. Her weight used to be 248. She had the gastric sleeve surgery in 2014. She lost a lot of weight, but then started regaining, and she wasn't feeling good. She was tired. She was, she had sciatica, and she had high blood pressure. It was borderline. They told her she might need to go on medication. So she saw what her mom, and a lot of people who have weight loss surgery are happy, but sometimes there's a little bit of frustration afterwards of how they're doing. And you might think, I mean, most doctors, I think, would assume, look, after weight loss surgery, we don't have anything else to offer you. I mean, if this is the best you can do with weight loss surgery, and most of the people who have weight loss surgery, they will say, I tried every diet before, and I need surgery, right? They don't just go to surgery first. So if someone's tried every diet and then had the surgery and then they're stuck, I don't know what to say. But she saw her mom going, having all those, that transformation. And she said, well, if mom can do it, I can do it. It was a challenge. And she did it. And you won't believe the picture of her after. Here we go. Wow. Look at that. Amazing, right? And now she lost 62 pounds, going plant-based. All you can eat. The fatigue went away, lots of energy. The sciatica pain went away. Her blood pressure went down to normal. She lost all the problems that she had, that she was struggling with after the weight loss surgery. And she thought, there's no way I could do this. A lot of people who hear about plant-based, the initial reaction is, there's no way I can do this. But you know what? First of all, you don't have to be 100% to get benefits. And second of all, you can make the changes gradually and things like that. But the point is that it does get easier over time for most people. That your taste buds change and the cravings can go away and things like that. I don't know how many of you are already plant-based? Yeah, I'm sure most people will vouch for the things I'm saying, right? So she loves it. She said she'll never go back. Now here's another story. This is pretty incredible too. This is Sally, 364 pounds. Similar to Janet, she was using a walker, but she can only walk 5 steps. So Janet can get across the room, but Sally could only make it 5 steps, out of breath. And her knees were so bad that she needed knee replacement, but they wouldn't do the operation because she was too overweight. They needed her body mass index to be less than 40. And again, what are we gonna do? I mean, she can't exercise to lose weight. She's probably, she's tried so many different diets. Well, she goes plant-based, and by the way, yeah, this is her now. However, I will say this, she's continuing to lose. And the thing is, she's not done yet. And it's funny because I hesitate whether to share her story because her story is not over. This is the middle, I think. I think she's gonna continue to lose. But she's lost 144 pounds. Again, all you can eat, 144 pounds. Her body mass index is now 36. She had the knee replacement, it went very well. And now not only is the knee better, but the breathing is better. She used a walker before. There's no walker, there's no cane. She's walking all over the place, feeling great. And by the way, she also had diabetes and she was on a medication. Her sugars went down to a much lower level. She no longer qualifies as having diabetes and no longer takes medication for it. Technically, she's borderline, but we'll take borderline over diabetes, right? Here's another patient, Julie. Julie also had gastric bypass and regained a lot of weight, actually up to 245. You can see this is her after the surgery, regained the weight, and here she is now. She's lost 75, she's still losing. The other thing that we see a lot with people who go plant-based is their cholesterol plummets. Her cholesterol dropped 27%, which, to be honest with you, is roughly what we see with statin medications. So for many people, they can avoid statins by going plant-based. I mean, there's no guarantees. I can't stand up here and guarantee that this will work perfectly for everybody. Here's another patient, Donald. He lost a lot of weight and his cholesterol dropped 36%, which is even more. I mean, here's a younger person, Ryan, only 18. And it's so rewarding as a physician to help younger people too, because so many younger people are struggling with their weight these days and they're getting diabetes, and he has diabetes in his family. So it's so much better to intervene and help people when they're younger, which is not always easy, but okay, so weight loss without portion control. I hope those stories inspired you, and I think I could probably end here, and hopefully I've inspired some of you already. However, this way of eating does so much more, right? Our number one killer, heart disease. This is Jerry. I'm gonna give you an example of how this works. What's the big deal? Well, here's an example, and if this doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will, but I'll have more stories to share in case this doesn't inspire you. So Jerry has type 1 diabetes, was getting chest pain. Just walking across the parking lot, he'd have to stop because of chest pain. They found 2 major blockages in 2 big blood vessels, including one that's called the Widowmaker. I'm sure you've heard of the Widowmaker. And they put him on medications. They weren't working. He was having side effects. they told him, well, you can work on your diet and exercise, but you know what doctors say about diet, less red meat, more chicken and fish, and that's what Jerry believed. And he was doing that, and it wasn't working, and his chest pain was actually getting worse. He was also exercising. He was told the next step was gonna be bypass surgery. And so, eating chicken and fish, exercising, was gonna need bypass surgery. For those of you who aren't familiar with bypass surgery, it's a very invasive, aggressive procedure. They literally slice open your leg, take a vein out of your leg, cut open your breastbone, right? Literally break your bones, and spread them apart, take your heart out of your body and connect it to a machine, and then take the blood vessel and, I don't mean to, I'm upsetting people here, but I apologize, but and then sew the vein onto the heart, put the heart back together in the body, put the bones back together, and literally staple the chest back together with staples. It's a very invasive procedure. But Jerry happened to hear about the benefits of a plant-based diet through our class. Would anyone like to hear what happened to him, or should we move on? Oh, you're curious. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm gonna actually have, rather than me tell the story, I'm gonna actually have Jerry tell it.
Mow the lawn, I always like to mow
There he
the
is.
lawn, and I would have chest pains. And he got to the point where walking across the parking lot, for example, at the Kaiser Butterfly building, just parking in the normal parking area and walking to the entrance, I would have chest pains. We were told that the stent would not work because of the location of the blockage. I had 2 arteries that were over 50% blocked, and I would need bypass surgery. We had a second angiogram, and we're told then that we would try diet and exercise. So I exercised regularly on a stationary bike, and we didn't really make any dietary changes. We stuck with chicken and fish, and the chest pains continued to increase to the point where I was having chest pains every day. And obviously that caused some concern for me and for my family. And for a man in his 60s to have chest pains every day is an indication of something big is going to happen, and we were concerned about that. And June 9th, we attended Dr. Lawenda's plant-based diet meeting and found out about the plant-based diet and made the decision that day to go on a totally plant-based diet. Suddenly, after about a month or two, the chest pains started slowing down. And we have a calendar at home where we were writing the chest pain incidents to keep track of it, because Dr. Ryan always wanted to know how often we've had chest pains. And it got to the point where we weren't writing anything on the calendar because the chest pains were gone. I was able to mow the lawn, I was able to walk across the parking lot, and I saw Dr. Narayan for a follow-up visit, and I had been diagnosed with chronic angina. She said because of my diet, that had changed, and I was now I wasn't on the verge of needing bypass surgery. I said, well, do I need to have another angiogram? She said, no, angiograms are for people who are having problems, and you're not having problems. It has solved my heart disease problem. It unclogged the arteries, took away the angina, and everything is full speed ahead now. And we're very pleased with the results that it's produced in my life.
All right. Amazing, huh? Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, you don't see this advertised on TV. How come? There's no money in it, right? But there's been lots of studies on it. There's been books written. It's in documentaries. It's out there. There's just not a lot of money in it, so there's not a big promotion behind it. But if you think about it, as you all have heard, he had terrible chest pain, was going to have this invasive procedure, risky procedure, and within a couple months or so, just by eating oatmeal and just by eating salads, beans, potatoes, fruits, some nuts and seeds, it literally just melted away. It melted away. Our #1 cause of death, and it melted away with something so simple, so cheap, so easy. And I mentioned that the bypass surgery is a risky procedure. Actually, 2% of people who have bypass surgery die from it. And this is a whole long list. I'm not trying to by the way, if you need the surgery, you need it. There are some cases where people, might need it. I'm not trying to say that it's an evil procedure, but there's a long list of side effects versus a plant-based diet. I can't really think of any side effects. I know that, food, of course, can, we can have, I suppose, different reactions to food, but nothing like this, right? So, and of course, there's so many benefits to eating a plant-based diet as opposed to the bypass surgery. It helps the chest pain, but there's really no other benefits like the innumerable benefits I mentioned with the plant-based diet. So if you're skeptical, this is just one patient, is there any science behind this? There's absolutely science. This was a randomized controlled trial. This is Dr. Ornish's trial. And he showed that blockages can actually open up on a plant-based diet, but people who remained on their usual diet, the blockages got worse. And 90% of the angina in this study went away with diet and lifestyle. If you think about it, 90% of the angina went away within weeks. Just imagine we could flip a switch in this country and 90% of heart disease could go away. It's truly amazing. You have a question?
Yeah, real quick, regarding Jerry, is heart disease a typical outcome of type 1 diabetes?
It raises your risk. And type 1 and type 2, it definitely raises your risk. It doubles or triples it. Yeah. So that was one study. Here's another, because you might think, well, that's just one study. Here's another study done about 10 years later. This is Dr. Esselstyn's work. In his work, 90% of the patients who were taught, 89% who were taught plant-based, about how to live a plant-based lifestyle, 90% adhered to it, stuck with it, and 99% of them, their heart disease went into remission. But those who did not stick with it, 62% went on to have subsequent heart problems within a span of 4 years. So you stick with it, it's almost a guarantee. And I love questions. I'm just gonna ask if we could hold them only because I've got so much information, but, and I feel bad saying that, but I wanna make sure I get to everything, and I may end up answering your question in just a moment. And I'll stick around at the end too to answer questions. So now I'm a visual person. I like to see visual proof of things, and this is, there have been many images published, but this was Dr. Esselstyn's study. He published, well, all of these images you see. This arrow, this is a nuclear stress test of the heart, and this arrow is pointing to an area of the heart that's not getting enough blood, and you can see that it's dark there. It's because there's a blockage and there's no blood flow. Just 3 weeks after a plant-based diet with no cholesterol medication in this case, the blood flow returned in 3 weeks. That's how fast. I mean, you saw Jerry, it was within a couple months, the chest pain went away. That's how fast we can fix this problem naturally. It doesn't take years to fix it. It can happen in weeks to months. This is a patient who had an angiogram, and you can see here's a normal section of artery. So these are pictures of arteries. This is a normal section. Down here, it's more narrow because of cholesterol. And just a couple years later, this picture is repeated, and you can see the artery opened up more or less back to normal. Now you might think, okay, so there's some science out there, but is it actually catching on? Are the doctors getting this? Is it becoming mainstream? Actually, the American College of Cardiology now officially recommends, you may or may not know this, a plant-based diet for prevention of heart disease. So it's not just the quack doctors giving the presentation, it's actually the American College of, I'm kidding, of course, College of Cardiology. I'm gonna share another quick story. This is a very powerful story because even though you may or may not relate to some of these patients, but what I want you to take away from this, even if this is not something you can relate to, just imagine if this works for them, how this can help you or help you to prevent this from happening. And I don't want you to wait to become these patients. Don't wait for something bad to happen. But this is Mark. Mark has one of the most severe cases of heart disease I've ever seen. When he was 40, he had a heart attack. That's young. He had 2 blockages. One was 100% and one was 80 to 90% in the widowmaker. He had to have 2 stents put in. 9 years later, he was getting chest pain again and had an abnormal stress test, and they had to do a bypass surgery. So he had bypass surgery. 3 years after that, he's playing basketball. I love basketball, by the way. He's playing basketball and he collapses, his heart stops. He literally drops dead playing basketball. Fortunately, some of the bystanders knew CPR, and they also called paramedics. They started the CPR, the paramedics came, they defibrillated his heart, and fortunately he survived. The odds of surviving that are very slim, around 2 or 3%. He was fortunate he survived. When he went to the hospital, they thought it was because of a blockage. They put a stent in there, and they thought everything was fixed and he'd be good to go, and I kid you not, I did not make up the story. 3 months later, he's playing basketball again. Same exact thing happens. He collapses, heart stops, and fortunately he survives again. I mean, surviving one time is incredible, but he survives it a second time. Now they put in an implantable defibrillator. Well, here's the thing. Here's why I share this story with you, is that while all this was going on, he didn't know about plant-based, and certainly he wasn't plant-based. His last angiogram, there was one branch of an artery called the diagonal branch that was 60% blocked or occluded, and they decided that a stent wasn't necessarily needed at that time for that. However, I just want you to keep that in mind, because eventually Mark did go plant-based, and here's the 60% blockage. Can you guys see around here? So here it's more, it's thicker, right? And down here it's more narrow, and you can see it's narrow here. So he ended up going plant-based and ended up having the angiogram repeated because he was having some shortness of breath. It ended up being a side effect of a medication, had nothing to do with his lifestyle. And the picture is repeated, and I don't know if you can see, but here to here, it opens up, and here as well. It went from 60% blocked to less than 20%, and actually it's considered minimal blockage. Now the thing is this is a patient who is becoming more and more occluded, more and more blocked, clogged up over the years, having one event after one heart problem after another after another. If his arteries can open up with a plant-based diet, your arteries can certainly open up. And this is incredible because we don't see this happen with medications. We don't see this happen really with anything. This is the most powerful heart medicine we have, period. There's just nothing that comes close to this. But the benefits of a plant-based diet are more than just your arteries. This was Mark before and after. He lost about 60 pounds. His cholesterol, even though he was already on medication, his cholesterol wasn't where the cardiologist wanted it to be. His bad cholesterol was 89, but when he went plant-based, it went down to 66. It dropped an additional 26%, having been already on cholesterol medication. His A1C, hemoglobin A1C, he was pre-diabetic before, and now he's normal. So, the benefits just keep adding and adding. What I love about this too is that Mark really didn't, like a lot of us, when we first start, oh, there's no way I'm gonna do this. You're not taking away this or that from me. And now he not only does he love it, but he's actually organizing potlucks at his work, plant-based potlucks. He's a volunteer for us. He's really a poster child and is one of the most passionate people I've met about plant-based diets. So now with a plant-based diet, you can also experience pleasant and unexpected, sometimes incredible surprises. This is Glenn, and this is one such story. Glenn had a high blood pressure, pre-diabetes. He's been on blood pressure medications for several years and thought he would never get off of them, because we're all told that. You go on medication, there's no way you're getting off. Well, within a couple months, he got off the medication, even though it's been 20 or some odd years, lost weight, lowered his A1C, but there was one thing that came up for Glenn that was a pleasant surprise. Does anyone want to guess what came up for Glenn that was a pleasant surprise? No guesses, huh? I'll let Glenn tell you.
Another little side effect, last year you prescribed some pills for me to kind of help, I don't want to get too personal here. Keep the wife happy. But my wife accused me the other night, she says, are you taking something? I said, yeah, plant-based.
Well, there you go. It works. It works. It works for the whole body. Now, you don't see this advertised on TV, and men, I hope men are paying attention, and those who care about men's health in this area are paying attention. But you don't see this advertised on TV, but I think if you did, it might look something like this. Ask your doctor if a plant-based diet is right for you. Warning, side effects may include weight loss, lower blood sugar, lower blood pressure, lower cholesterol, improved circulation, regular bowel movements, less pain and inflammation, increased energy, and that. Now again, this works with your entire circulation. It works in your legs and in your feet. This is a patient named Kevin, also type 1 diabetes, had painful neuropathy in his feet. He was on painkillers, also had erectile dysfunction, was getting ulcers in his feet, large ones, scary ones. 10 centimeters was, he had a 10 centimeter ulcer in 2016. It was infected. He was on IV antibiotics. It was not healing. He was told he's going to need an amputation. They're going to have to cut below the knee, and he'd have to have his leg amputated. Well, this is his foot, by the way. From here, I'm sorry if I'm grossing you out, but I want you all to see why I'm, what's the deal with this? I want you to understand why I'm here. So from here to here is one big ulcer. Now, he was desperate. He asked his foot doctor, is there anything we can do to save my leg? Everything's not working. His foot doctor, Dr. Marshall, happened to work next door to a nurse practitioner named Maureen, who works with me on in the plant-based program. So it was recommended to the patient, to Kevin, why not try and change your diet? You've got nothing to lose. You're already going to lose your leg. Why not give it a shot? Well, he was desperate. He went for it. I kid you not, it went better than we would have ever expected. He ended up, it healed, basically. He saved his leg. He saved his leg by changing what's on his plate, by changing the food on his plate. He's not overweight, by the way, and he's got type 1 diabetes. He's actually thin. Now, it healed so fast and so well, I kid you not, I'm not making this up, that the foot doctors in that department, there's several of them. This is Kaiser, it's a big department. They were so amazed by this that they started recommending to all their patients who had ulcers on their feet from diabetes to go on a plant-based diet, and they're seeing that every patient who adopts this, they're getting better results with plant-based, that it's actually becoming part of their medical treatment plan. Is, okay, here we're gonna do this, and also we want you to meet with this team and learn about plant-based. And so it's changed everything. But the nice thing about this, again, too, is that there's always more benefits. So the neuropathy pain, about 90% of his neuropathy pain went away. He doesn't need his painkillers anymore, and his erectile dysfunction went away. So here's a man who was gonna lose his leg, be with severe pain probably for the rest of his life, and poor quality of life when it came to the male part. And within 3 months, all these problems went away. I mean, just 3 months. Here's his foot before, here's his foot 3 months later. So this is why I'm passionate about this. I've just never seen any medicine do all of these things as safely, as cleanly, as cheaply. I mean, it's just an amazing, amazing therapy. Now what about, I'm gonna pause, not literally pause, but I just wanna talk a little bit about vitamins and supplements. If you eat this way, it turns out that vitamin B12 is very important. Most of you know this, but just in case. So vitamin B12 is very important for our health. However, it's not made by plants or animals. It's actually made by bacteria. Did you guys know this? So it's made by bacteria, and it turns out that today's food supply is so cleaner than it used to be that there's less bacteria, and it's on purpose. We don't want to get sick. We don't want to get food poisoning. So, and also the soil, unfortunately, has more chemicals in it. The water, we have chlorine in the water to kill the bacteria. So anyway, the point is that we're not eating as much bacteria as we used to, so it's recommended to take a B12 supplement if you eat this way. There happens to be more bacteria in meat, but we don't recommend eating meat to get bacteria. I'd rather personally take a B12 supplement and not have heart disease and all those other problems. So 2,500 micrograms per week all at once, or you can take smaller doses throughout the week, like 500 a day or 1,000 a day. And if you're not sure where your levels are, it's a good idea to actually get your levels checked periodically. Even if you aren't plant-based, it's not a bad idea, because you can be low even if you're not plant-based. Now, if you're worried about omega-3 fat, you don't really need to worry. There's some debate about this, but because you might be thinking, where am I going to get omega-3 fat if I don't eat fish? Well, guess what? It's not made by fish, it's made by plants, and on land you get omega-3 in greens and beans, and some nuts and seeds, especially flax seeds, walnuts, chia seeds, hemp seeds, things like that. Just moving on, I would be remiss if I did not mention type 2 diabetes, because that's the big one, no pun intended. I just want to share a couple stories real quick, and I know I tend to, hopefully, I know I'm probably running low on time, so go kind of quickly just to share some stories here. This is Karen. She lost over 30 pounds, which is great, but more importantly, these were her medications before, right? Including, I don't know if you can, I mean, this is all medical terminology, over 100 units of insulin. This is 50 units twice a day, and then regular insulin. So that's a lot of insulin and a lot of medications, blood pressure pill, depression pill. Today she's on none. Oops. She's on none. She was able to get off all of those. And you might think, well, you take her off those medications, her sugars are going to go up, everything's going to get worse. But no, actually, everything got better. Her A1C went from 10.5 to 6.6, which is exactly where we want it to be. 7 or less than 7 is considered the goal. So she made the goal without any medications. Her blood pressure is normal without medication. Her cholesterol plummeted. So that's pretty amazing. This is what Karen wrote. She wanted to share her experience with us. She says, when I was diagnosed as diabetic in 2005, my blood sugar wouldn't register on a meter. It was 1,300 something. I was in diabetic ketoacidosis. The doc said that if I hadn't come in that day, I would have been dead in 3 days. Today, I don't take any diabetic medications. I weigh less now than I've weighed in probably 20 years. I feel better than I have felt in I don't know how long. I feel this program has literally saved my life. That's how powerful this can be. Now, if you're wondering, some people think, well, you know, it's just the weight. As long as we can lose weight, we don't have to worry about diabetes. Well, it turns out that actually weight is a big part of it, no pun intended, but also diet, even irrespective of weight, is important. Studies have shown repeatedly that a plant-based diet lowers your risk of diabetes independent of your weight, independent of body mass index. In fact, this was a big study with over 300,000 patients in it, and they controlled for weight. So they took weight out of the equation, and a plant-based diet still was protective. The more plant-based you eat, the less diabetes. That's what that shows. And why is that? It turns out that saturated fat from animal foods is actually a more powerful factor when it comes to insulin resistance than many of the other ingredients in foods, even more so than sugar or other fats, like unsaturated fats. And if you have diabetes, studies have been done, and this was a review of 14 trials. They found the greatest improvement in blood lipids, that's cholesterol, body weight, and hemoglobin A1C occurred in participants following low-fat plant-based diets. This was an incredible study. It was a small study, but what they found was, again, for those of you who are thinking, well, it's just the weight, as long as we keep the weight down, it doesn't matter. They actually, they put people on people with type 2 diabetes who were on insulin, they actually hospitalized them so they could control what they eat. They put them on a plant-based diet, and they made sure that their weight didn't drop. They kept feeding them and as much as they would eat to keep their weight steady and that was hard to do actually. When you eat plant-based, you typically lose weight. They did that, and what they found was that over half of the people in the study were able to get rid of their insulin, even though their weight didn't change, and it all happened in just 16 days. That's how fast it happened. And we see that, I can tell you from my experience in our program, within 1 to 3 months, the majority of patients get off their insulin. I'm not kidding, it depends. There are some that need to stay on it. I'm not gonna lie, it's not 100%. The American College of Endocrinology, and there's actually 2 colleges of endocrinology. For sake of time, I'll let you read this, but if you're interested. But they now recommend a plant-based diet for type 2 diabetes. So it's official. It's the American College of Cardiology recommends plant-based diet for heart disease, and the endocrinologists recommend it for type 2 diabetes. One last story on diabetes real quick. This was a patient I love this story because you know what you hear when you're diagnosed is you hear, well, you got it for life, right? And once you go on insulin, you got it for life. Well, here's a patient who was diagnosed in January of this year, was told that you need to be on insulin, you're gonna be on the rest of your life. He was started on medication and insulin. Just 2 months later, he's off all of it. And his A1C, by the way, you can see up here was 12.4. That means his sugars were in the 300 to 400 range, the 300 to 400 range. Today, he's on no medication. In fact, his last A1C, it went from 12.4 down to 5.1. 5.1 is completely normal, not even borderline, no pre-diabetes. This is normal. This is essentially a cure. So from going from being told this is going to be the rest of your life to essentially not having it anymore within a span of a few months, I mean, I don't know, this is just amazing, right? This is Ignacio. He said, you know, I was first told I'd probably have to, I kind of summarized this already, but that I have to take insulin for the rest of my life, and 2 months later I'm completely off. I have more energy, feel great, started hiking. No one can keep up with me. I am so grateful. Now, a lot of you think that, or those people who haven't started this or haven't tried making changes, a lot of people feel that this lifestyle is too extreme, it's too hard. I don't think a bowl of bean chili is extreme or hard. What I think, in fact, I can't wait to see all the delicious food that Susan's gonna make. What I think is extreme or hard is this. This is a man who had you can tell, a horrible wound in his foot, type 2 diabetes. He actually just became a grandfather within that year. Any grandparents in the room? No a few? I've been told that being a grandparent is even more rewarding and joyous than being a parent. And this man was looking forward to it for many, many years, and he loses his leg right after becoming a grandfather. And unfortunately, I wish the story ended there. I mean, I wish I could leave, that there would be a happy ending to this, but unfortunately, as this man is recovering, his good foot, his remaining foot, develops this horrible ulcer on it, wound, and he had to lose the other leg. So within a span of about a year's time, he lost both legs. He couldn't drive anymore, he couldn't walk anymore, he couldn't work, so he lost his job. But more importantly, it was so devastating to him and his family, he went into a severe depression. And this story is very personal to me because this man was my father. And yes, and I can't begin to tell you, I know what it's like being on the family side now. You know, as a doctor, you don't really appreciate that, but I know what it's like, and it was just the worst thing we could have ever imagined, because he was essentially on cloud nine. I'm a new grandpa, I'm working, I'm happy, I'm enjoying my job, and I'm enjoying everything was good. And then next thing you know, this happens, and he's severe depression, and his life just kind of went down the tubes, and he never really fully recovered. And the other thing too is that our granddaughter, or our first, I'm not granddaughter, but his granddaughter, our first child, grew up with the grandfather. She was just confused and kind of not scared, but why doesn't he have legs? What's going on? It was just weird for her, and we have to explain it. It's hard to explain to a 1-year-old, right? So, and it was sad for us that she couldn't grow up with the grandfather that's not him, but you know, she couldn't grow up with kind of a normal, healthy grandfather. So it was sad all the way around. And the reason I mention this story is not to have you feel sorry for me, but is a couple. One is I don't want you to wait for bad things to happen, because a lot of times you don't know when it's going to happen. It just hits. We didn't know this was coming. It just hits. It just happens. And secondly, he didn't know the information that I'm sharing with you all today. So now that you have this information, do something with it, and don't wait. A lot of people wait for things like, not just for, you know, diabetic problems, but they say, well, if I have a heart attack, then I'll change. But you definitely don't want to wait for that, for sure. Because 2/3 of heart attacks, there's no warning whatsoever. Those aren't good odds. And the other odds that aren't good are 1/3 of the time you die. So it's too late, obviously, to change your diet if you're dead. And you know, they're so common, over 700,000 a year, 1 every 43 seconds. There's been probably nearly 100 since we've started this presentation, 100 in this country. So it's something that's so common, you just don't want to take those odds. The other thing is that a lot of people, I see people all day in my office who have symptoms like fatigue, indigestion, acid reflux, pain, inflammation, anxiety and depression over their health. And these things, these quality of life issues, problems, can actually get better within days to weeks. A study was actually done where they put people on a plant-based diet, and within 12 weeks, they saw significant improvements in pain, in anxiety, in fatigue. Across the board, quality of life improves, and I've seen that time and time again with people. I'm going to share one final story and a few quotes, and I apologize if I'm a little over time. I'm trying not to be, but is this helpful so far? Is anybody inspired? Just one person? Good. I hope so. I always say if one person's inspired, it's a success for me, and that'll keep me going. So, okay, so this is a male, kind of young, 38, 6'2", 255 pounds, obese, had pre-diabetes, fatty liver disease, acid reflux, symptoms of sleep apnea, had been yo-yo dieting his whole adult life, felt like a failure because, you know, after failing so many times, you just don't, you don't feel good about that, and worried he could die suddenly because his father had a heart attack at age 45 and his grandfather at age 38, and he was 38, so he was worried he was going to have a heart attack. Well, he learned about plant-based. He lost 75 pounds in 8 months. That's pretty decent weight loss. Maintained it for 6 years. BMI went down to normal. Pre-diabetes went away. Fatty liver went away. Acid reflux went away. His blood pressure dropped 20 points. His sleep apnea symptoms went away. He loves his health and loves his food. He's actually happy about all this. And I don't have a video or anything, but I do have a before and after picture. I don't know if you guys recognize him. Thank you, thank you. Yes, this is my twin. I actually have for me, this is the most fun part of the presentation, is to show my old pants. So these are old pants. Can you guys see? So, you know, to be honest, this whole experience has been nothing short of just completely transformative. I wish I'd known this years ago. I'm glad I know it now. when I first learned about it, I didn't think I could do it. It sounded too hard, but I did find that personally, I didn't go 100% overnight. I went about 80% overnight, and I challenged myself, and I lost 17 pounds the first month, even not being 100%, and it encouraged me to keep going. The first month or so, it's tough because you have cravings and your body's going through changes. You're not really sure what's going on, but you're starting to feel better over time. And after a month or two, most of the cravings I had went away, and I started to enjoy the food a lot more. Your taste buds change, so things you didn't really think you enjoyed, you start to enjoy. You go, what's going on? Why do I like this now? And it just got easier and better over time. And I love it now. And the thing is, for me, this experience was very emotional too and spiritual, because I feel like it gave me a lot of freedom that I didn't have. Freedom to, I love to eat. I'm sure some of you do. And I didn't like portion control and measuring and counting and going hungry and going through cravings. Now I feel free. I mean, again, I can eat as much as I want, not have to measure anything. I just feel free, not have to worry so much. And that's very liberating. But the other thing is, I always felt, my whole adult life, I felt trapped by my genetics and by the fact that I'd failed so many times to get healthy. And I felt like there was something wrong with me. Something was wrong. And now I feel like it wasn't me. It's the food. I was actually designed by, I know we're in a church, I was designed by God pretty well. And most of us actually can get really, have amazing results when we change the food. And so I want to leave with a few quotes. Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. I always say that any change is good, progress over perfection. However, if you have a lot of weight to lose, or if you have a severe disease, I recommend you aim the bar high. Some people I know have said, well, I'll change 50%, 40%, then they don't get the results, and they don't get the results, they give up, right? We want to see results. So I say aim the bar high, and chances are you'll do very well. The food you eat can be either the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. The best kept secret in medicine is that under the right conditions, the body can heal itself. And last but not least, today is only one day and all the days that will ever be, but what will happen in all the other days that ever come can depend on what you do today. So today or tomorrow can be the beginning of a new chapter in the rest of your life. And you can make such a huge difference, not only for yourself, but for your family. I always like to, my father passed away at the end of the year, and I dedicate all the work that I do to him. His experience was a tragedy for our family. I'm trying to turn it into a positive. I promised that I wouldn't let his suffering be in vain. And I just want to thank you all for the time, the opportunity to share and help you, hopefully. Thank you. Thank you.